Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things. Now I'll be upfront, this one today is all for me. This was inspired by a festive tank challenge, which is organised each year by Tom over on Blue Sky, and I will pop a link in the description so you can see his stuff, his work, and what this is all about. The idea is that from the 21st, so I've left it a little bit late in letting you know, but from the 21st to the 31st of this year, and every year, what we do is have 10 days to assemble a tank and paint it. And it's just a nice little end of year hobby project. Now this year's theme is the Sherman, and Tom did say any Sherman variant. So I thought I would put on my little malicious compliance hat, and this is the Sherman T, or Sherman Tesla, for Conflict 47. I love these stupid things so much. So yeah, today what I'm doing is mostly for me, and it means I do squeak under the line with quite a bit to go before the end of the year. There's one or two things I'm going to add at the end of the video just to say hello, goodbye, and all the best to yous. But yeah, let's get started. So to start off with, once I've got everything assembled, first thing I have done is to prime them. Now here I've used US Olive Drab from Vallejo. You could also use a medium grey from pretty much any supplier that you want to get your hands on, and just give it a couple of coats of US Olive Drab from the pot. And I have done that in quite an old video. It's possible, but if you're going to be painting a fair bit of American armor, it's worth picking up the spray can. Now you'll see there is a ton of stowage on this. Some of it is little plastic accessories from the US infantry. I wanted a bit of crew gear on there. But most of this is actually a collection of 3D printed stowage. I will link to the storefront in the description where you can find its Kunlane, I think is a pronunciation, Kunlane models. They do absolutely fantastic kits. The bulk of the tank itself is the plastic M4 from Warlord Games, but if you have got a printer and you want some really cool Sherman variants and a bunch of others, make sure you check them out. Thoroughly recommend. So the first thing I'm going to do is, same as I do for pretty much all my armor, is to give this a wash. Now what I've started out here is mixing up in my palette. This is half and half strong tone and Speedpaint Medium. It doesn't need to be Speedpaint Medium if you don't have it, or just don't want to use it. You can use water instead. It will just be slightly runnier. What I'm looking to do here is, well, wash the whole tank, particularly paying attention to any recesses, making sure that we're getting our shading mix in there so we have plenty of detail. I'm going to go over the entire tank, and when you get to big flat areas like on the side here, if you end up with a big sort of brown glop, move your brush around, and this is why it's handy to have a big flat edge brush, because those little sweeping motions are actually really good at keeping things from collecting in a way you probably don't want. So everything that I'm going to do to the hull here I will of course be doing on the turret as well. Areas like stowage, because I'm going to be painting those slightly differently later on, I'm not too worried if I hit them, but I don't specifically need to. So away we go. Let's douse this tank in our shade mix. Now once that's dry, we've got plenty of shading. I have got one or two tide marks on the thing. I'm not too worried about that on the flat panels because we're going to highlight those anyway. On the running gear, whoops, but I kind of rushed it, so that's on me. Should have been more careful, but hey ho, it'll look fine once we're done. Now of course, we're not just painting a Sherman, we're painting a Sherman Tesla variant, which means we've got this walloping great Tesla cannon. I love these things so much. We've got that to paint. Now, before going on to re-greening the tank, as it were, now's a good time to lay down the white for the plasma coils, or Tesla coils. Now, I could probably go straight to white here, but what I have instead is a little bit of company grey and a nice flat edge brush. What I'm going to do is, from the edge of the mount, kind of go to about halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way down, and then I'll flip it over and paint from the other direction. And this is not the fastest way of doing things, but it will make sure that for the most part we're not going to hit the bar, which is supporting the weapon. If we do, that's why we're doing it now, so that we can bring that green back in a couple of moments. Now, if there's one thing I'm really good at, it's not following my own good advice. So you can probably see I got a little bit excited there, got a little bit carried away, and I've made a mess. Oh well, that's why we're doing this step now. I've now got some matte white, and I've thinned that down a little bit too much. But yeah, we'll do the same thing again now with the white, and now that I've already made a mess, I'm not going to be quite as careful. But I would suggest, you know, if you can contain yourself where I couldn't, go a little bit slower. Okay, now that I'm satisfied that that is white, and boy howdy that is glowing, I'm going to put that aside and we're going to get started on painting the rest of the tank. So green this up again. So I'm going to turn to now some US Olive Drab from the pot. And in a previous video where I did something similar to this, I said instead of the dry brushes from the Army Painter, you could use a makeup brush. So I have a makeup brush. The idea here is that something large and soft is going to be relatively simple to apply this with. And the edge of some of these flatter panels, so on the front here, I'll just sort of stipple a little, and I want to leave the recess shading that we've got. But for flatter panels, I can use this to add a little bit of volume to what we're doing. Over the turret, I'm going to do the same thing, quite generously blast it with that US Olive Drab, but I want to avoid the Tesla cannon for now. What I'll do will be to grab an ordinary brush and some of that US Olive Drab and just paint this along most of the ribbing to the gun here. Alright, so to add a bit more volume to our green, what I've mixed up here on my palette, this is roughly 4 parts Olive Drab to 1 part Iraqi Sand, and it gives us a lighter, slightly faded green. I don't want to be quite so heavy with this one. And what I'm going to do is aim towards edges, centers of panels and what have you, just to do a little quick color modulation without having to bust out the airbrush. This is going to look brighter than it is going on, but you'll see as it settles and dries, it actually becomes quite reasonable. So, over as much of the green stuff as I want. And you can carry on doing that. You can add little successive bits more of the Iraqi Sand in there to get a lighter green, but I'm just going to go to a lighter green. What I have is one of the funky little wedge tip dry brushes and some Necrotic flesh. I just want to make sure I haven't got too much on there. And what I'm going to do then is angle my brush along the sharp edges of the vehicle and pop a little bit of this on. That might be a bit much, but hey ho, we're going to weather this as well. So, over the bits where I really want the detail to pop, and this being a Conflict 47 tank, I don't mind all that much if it's a little bit lurid, but it will tone down a bit as it dries. And I've probably got too much on my brush as it is. Now we come to the part that I really don't like doing, painting the tracks, but we're also going to paint all of the black details at the same time. It's just easiest to start with the tracks. What I have is some German grey from Vallejo, and I've watered this down almost half and half. You can actually get away with thinning this out quite a bit, which makes it nice and easy to work with. And yeah, just slop this on the tracks. Remembering as well that the running gear on the Shermans, though this isn't the best cast suspension, it's still worth popping a little bit of this over the wheels. Easiest to start with the tracks though. It's not difficult, it's just time consuming. But thinning your paint out will help. As you see, just jam this on and it'll run into most of the bits you need it to. So there we go, that's nice and quick. There's not a huge amount of that other than the tracks to do, but it's not as difficult as I make it sound. I don't like painting tracks. Never really known why. Now before we do our stowage, we want to do our weathering. But before we do our weathering, we want to apply any transfers that are going to go on this thing. Now I have a transfer sheet lurking somewhere. I'm going to quickly apply just a couple of those. I don't want to go overboard. And once it's had some time to dry, what I've got here is a little bit of foam from one of those acoustic baffling panels. It's garbage, it didn't work, but it makes for really good little bits of plucked off foam for chipping. I'm going to dip the tip of this little knobble thing into some German Camo Black Brown, and you'll see just dab it off on a bit of kitchen towel until I see what I'm going to leave behind. And what I want to do is just catch some of the edges. You can very quickly go overboard with this, so take your time. And at first, I hate saying less is more, because less is not more is more, but sometimes less is enough. But just little bits of basically visual interest on some panels, particularly towards the edges. And pay attention as well to areas where you'd see a lot of crew travel. So where the guys are likely to be climbing up, sticking their boots and what have you, make sure that you are getting those as well. So don't forget the running gear, leading bits, yeah, anywhere that you're likely to see a little bit of dinged up metalwork on your tank. And remembering, of course, to do the same to your turret. Now, before I get into doing any sort of rust effects and what have you, what I have is Emperor Gold, and I'm going to paint this onto the sort of working parts of the Tesla gun. Now, this one is from the John Blanche range, from the Army Painter, but something like Warplock Bronze, or even True Copper. You don't have to worry too much about what you're using here. We are painting a fictional version of the ubiquitous M4 Sherman. I just like this because it's nice and dark and it covers super well. And now we can get on to painting some of the stowage. Now, if we're looking at this as being late war US gear, then the greens are going to be generally a lot darker. I know obviously this isn't a real tank, but since it takes place in a fictionalized version of a very real 1947, what I have is camo olive green. And this, I'm going to paint things like ammo cans, jerry cans. Some of the things are going to be left in that US Olive Drab that we started with. But a lot of these smaller containers and what have you, I'm going to paint them in with this. Now some of this will be a little easier to reach than other places, but it's not going to matter too much if it's not perfect. Now for the bucket here, I've got green-grey. I'm also going to use this to base coat the webbing, so that the two infantry packs that are on the side of the turret. And I might use this. Oh, that works. Okay, that's way easier than yeah, sweet. I'm just going to dry brush this with a little bit of green-grey. That'll do the job. Fantastic. Now, for the tarpaulin across the back and this one rolled up on the side here, I'm going to coat them in a blast of khaki. I could probably thin my paint a little bit more than that, actually. That's probably a good idea. Now, over the parts that are going to be rope, I've already hit them with a blast of khaki because it will make this tan earth cover all the better. There's not really a right color for rope. I just like tan earth. Now, for the straps and what have you, I'm going to use, well, canvas. This is from the Panzer Aces line, conveniently enough. And yeah, honestly, if you're looking at doing a little more visual interest, then a dark brown or something might be better. But I am trying to go for largely accurate, despite the fact we're painting a big fake tank. So yeah, swings and roundabouts. Now, any wooden details, I'm going to hit here with a little bit of beige brown. Yeah, I keep saying, oh, these are just finishing touches. Man, they do take a bit. And the more, the more stowage you put on your vehicle, obviously you're going to have to do more of this, but it does look cool when it is done. So it's worth the extra effort, I reckon. When at last all of those little bits and pieces have their base coats on, what I have again is my mix of half and half, strong tone and Speedpaint Medium. I'm going to go over all of the stowage that we've just painted, with the exception, I'm not going to put any on the big flat tarpaulin because it's going to collect strangely. It won't really suit the look that I've got in mind. But everything else, so the packs on the turret, all this stuff, yep, we coat of this. Now, meanwhile, while that dries, over the copper parts, I'm going to apply some Grimdark Shadow. This is another one from the John Blanche range, and if you don't want to pick it up, you can get very similar by mixing a green, like military shader, and just dark tone. But I do like what this does, particularly over copper. So over the pipes and the big generator doubler on the back here. Now to polish that off over a big soft brush, what I have is a tiny bit of Iraqi Sand. And yeah, I'm just going to pop a little bit of this over the cloth. You'll see, even though we haven't washed this one, I think the tarpaulin does work better with just the dry brush here. Now here's where we can have a bit of fun. Now I hate to bring up that dreadful word reality again, but in reality, Shermans were pretty well looked after considering. They didn't tend to get that rusty in the field. But what I have here, this is 1 drop of Vallejo red leather with 15 drops of, what is it? Speedpaint Medium. And the idea here is I just want to paint a few little bits of rusty collected gumph. The more of this you add, the more dinged up and busted this tank's going to look. And I might actually even get a little bit of water on my brush and thin that out some more. You know what? I'm going to add... Okay, this is now 20 to 1 with our mix. And that's closer to what I had in mind. What I want to do is just a few little scribbly blips, technical terms, of this in areas where it's likely that a little bit of rust might have collected. Like I said, you don't want to go nuts with this because it will look far more beaten up and dinged than you would probably like, but it's going to look cool once it dries. So feel free to go as nuts with this as you like, but think about that dreadful word reality a couple of times. And then, again, in the realm of don't go crazy with this, what I have is some military shade, and this I'm not going to thin down. What I'm going to do is, with just a little bit of it on my brush at a time, just do some thin little rain streak patterns in some areas. You don't need to do much of this, but it does look pretty cool. Like, it's pretty subtle on the camera, and indeed it doesn't actually show up all that much in person either, but it just adds an extra little dimension there. Okay, now here comes the really fun part, the bit that we've really been working towards. What I have is Plasma Coil Glow from the Army Painter. This is one of their effects paints, and it is a glow paint. It's got kind of a funky, chalky residue in the recesses. You could just as well use, say, a contrast or a speed paint or something here, maybe thin it out a little bit. But I'm going to apply this quite generously over our Tesla coil, making sure that I get it into the recesses there. You see, it doesn't necessarily want to just run off. But if I shift it around quite quickly and make sure that I get it into all the little nooks and crannies, yeah, this is going to look the business. So let's make sure, oops, I haven't collected it too heavily. I may have applied a little bit much there, so I've got a little bit of kitchen towel off to the side, and I'm just going to pluck out some of the bubbles I've made. Whoops. But I can, there we go, that's looking a little more reasonable. Okay, let's do that to the other parts. Now, I normally don't apply this stuff to such a large area. So what I've learned, and you might find helpful, is it's easier to have way too much on your brush at once and apply too much and then wick it away than it is to not have enough on your brush when you're first applying it, because then parts of it are going to dry as you are applying it. So bit of a sod there. I was planning on doing an extra step on this anyhow, so it's not a deal breaker, but definitely that looks cooler. So that last touch I was going to do is to grab some fresh matte white, and holding my brush at an angle here, I'm going to lightly drag along mostly the center to brighten that up a bit and very quickly give us a little bit of extra glow. I can go over that a couple of times if I want, space it out a bit more, and on the other side where things didn't go quite as planned, this will help to even that out a little bit. Now we're cooking. So, important lesson learned. Yeah, that could look a little bit better on both sides, but hey ho. What I'm going to do now is to take this outside and hit it with a matte varnish, because there are a couple of tiny wee details that I need to do after that stage. Then over the matte, I'm going to apply some gloss varnish to the coils to give them a bit of shine. And then I have, this is a B pencil. The softer the better, so to be or not to be, that is the question. And what I've done is rough that up against the edge of a little bit of sandpaper. And you'll see, as I buff along the extreme edges of some of these chips and scratches, we get a funky little silver edge to things, which if you put a bunch of it on, like if you go overboard, it's going to look really sharp and shiny. But a little bit of this at some of these edges really works well. And it's also super useful for details like handles, machine guns, anything that you want to be metal. Just buff with a little bit of this. So I'm going to finish off these last few details and then pop my turret on my tank, and we'll have a look at what it looks like. Yeah, man, once this thing is all finished. And so there at last, our M4A9 Sherman T is complete, and I had a lot of fun painting it. You can probably tell the point at which I was a little bit over it. It would probably benefit from a dust wash or something along the tracks, and I might do that a little bit later, maybe in a couple of days, but for now, the majority of work, the important stuff, is finished. So if you've got one of these or you've been eyeing them up, they're brilliant. They're a lot of fun. The Tesla weaponry is one of my favorite sort of visual design elements from Conflict 47, and the fact that they have buffed them so much in this new edition makes me very happy, because I will paint these all day. They make me happy. So again, thanks goes out to Tom for organizing the Festive Tank Challenge. I probably wouldn't have gotten around to doing this anytime soon if he hadn't. As well, because it's the last one before Christmas, Merry Christmas, folks. If you are out there and you're still watching, yeah, thank you for sticking around, and what an interesting year it has been. I'm probably going to have one or two extra videos, probably at least one before the end of the year, but if you don't get to see me, then let me say it now, Merry Christmas, and all the best of the new year to you. So thanks as well, as always, goes out to Exit 23 Games for the light and sound equipment, as well as all of my wonderful patrons who are keeping me ticking in paints and glue, which includes my most gorgeous producers who are showing up on screen now. Thank you very much for your support, folks. Now, any questions or anything, feel free to drop them in the comment box below. My Blue Sky and Instagram are both linked down there too. So, thank you very much for your time, folks, and you all enjoy the rest of your day.